Where are you here?
Oh, there I am. Hey.
Where are you? There.
Got me?
Oh boy. Yeah. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me.
Come on, man.
Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All along this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Yeah.
Walk with my mama.
You walk with my mama.
Walk with me.
Walk with me too.
You walk with my mama.
Yeah.
Walk with me.
And walk with me too.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus journey.
Want Jesus. Walk with me.
Walk with me. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. All along this Jesus journey. Hold my hand, Lord. And hold my hand.
Walk with Moses.
You walk with Moses.
Walk with me.
Walk with me.
You walk with Moses. Walk with me.
Walk with me.
While I'm home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus journey.
I want Jesus.
I want Jesus to walk with me.
Say, walk with me, Lord. How y'all doing?
Walk with me. Walk with me.
Lord. Walk with me.
Walk with me.
I'm on my
Yeah, Lord.
I want Jesus
I want Jesus
to walk with me.
to walk with me. Walk with David, a little shepherd boy.
That's a deal with that one, huh?
Yeah, you made him a great king. I know David shouted for joy. He walked with David, and he's a little shepherd boy. You made him a great king. And David shouted for joy.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. So walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All along this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. You gotta walk with me, Lord.
Yeah!
a catchphrase I say go to church. And what I mean by that is, in some ways, you have to engage in the human relationships around you. That's like the best way to go about that. You have relationship, you have a family, you have some kind of community around you. And so that's the best place to go, because in some ways that's the place that will have this procedural aspect to it that will ground the other stuff. It's like if you have to to help your kids with their homework, or you have to do this kind of really grounded stuff that has very little to do with the ideology, you get engaged in other people's lives, then it binds you in a different way, right? It binds you.
And then like my father would, he was going to church, and I wasn't really living with him, but he was going to church, and he would like kind of, those are elements of this conversation. I got to go to church.
It's being part of a church is part of Christian discipleship. And in that word discipleship, there's this word discipline, which is, it's a discipline to go to church.
What would be so great about actually going to a church is like you start going to a church so that when you do need like to be prayed for, when you have something to be prayed for about, you have a place to just say that.
You're dead on right, Grizz, and that is what the church is for. To know and be known, to love and be loved, to have a place to go where people can pray for you, where they will welcome you in. And this is, again, part of why I want churches to have estuaries, because it is, I know that it is difficult in many churches for people to, in a sense, come in and bring their real self. And what I mean by that, people have to say what's on their mind, or you can't wrestle with them. It's like, so Plato, as John reminds us, is broad, so he's a wrestler. You can't wrestle over a screen. So maybe if it's paintball for Jesus, maybe it should be wrestling with Plato. Because, and in church, in a real space, now often it doesn't happen. I understand that, but at least there's a chance to actually have a relationship with grit. And that's part of why churches are local, they're relational, they're face-to-face, they're in real life.
Said about why would young people want to go to church, and I feel like I want to have some kind of dynamic message or something that if they do find some reason to come, I'm trying to fish, so I'm throwing bait and I'm trying to hook somebody. It's what Paul is doing too. He said about being evangelical, evangelism of some sort.
Well, fishers of men is the promise.
Yes, correct.
Possessed. We did go to church today. I took communion.
I don't go to church to think or to rationalize God. I go to church to worship Him. Right? And that's, I'm happy with that. I'm very happy with that. And afterwards, during coffee hour, we can all argue about the God of our understanding, right? Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think that the wild twin, the thing that led to my sort of dawning to consciousness of Christianity was a 101-day vigil that I did in a forest. And I went into the forest.
You don't have to go crazy.
Yeah.
You actually have to go, you have to humble yourself and and do it right here, right now, right?
Get up. I like how Father Schmemann talks about it for the life of the world. He says it starts when you get up and get ready and you walk or you go to church. You start those are simple. I get up. I brush my teeth, I take a shower, I put on clothes, I go, the things of life, and we're ascending up into heaven. You're
All right. A little bit of branding. Sorry for the late start. I have a very special guest. He is not just out in the hive mind. He is, in fact, at the Living Stones World Ministry Center.
World Ministry Center. Excellent.
Grizz, can you see the impressive edifice? I mean, I don't know why people aren't taking pictures of this place like they do the Hagia Sophia or, the Vatican at Rome. I don't know what's wrong with that.
Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
There you go. There you go. So Grim Grizz has landed the plane here in Sacramento, California. He flew in his private jet, and but we keep those kind of things a secret. So, and he brought some companions with him. What we have here are a good ensemble of people who have been together in person, in real life. We have broken the fourth wall, and we have survived to tell the tales. So this morning we are going to unpack. Sherry on the Mark D. Parker live stream was talking about unpacking, and I thought that was right. After an event like that, it takes a long time actually for it to sort of sink into my head. So welcome, Embody. First things to say, maybe just introduce yourselves briefly and the role that you played at the Northwestuary, otherwise known as whatever name Nate gave it. It's the Northwestuary to me, but maybe we'll have Nate go first. So Nate, introduce yourself a little bit because you got that sucker going.
Yeah. I'm Nate, and I was the organizer of the Estuary Northwest 2024 conference, also known as Northwestuary. I'm fine with either name. And Grim actually was the person who planted the seed. Sherry and I kind of kicked around the idea of doing a conference of some kind at some point in the future, but I didn't have any concrete idea of what it would look like or who I would invite or anything. So it was really just in the imagination phase and nothing further. Mm-hmm. And then Graham had a conversation with Slack, and I don't know in what Graham maybe can fill me in as to what form that conversation took, but Graham had gone out for Chad's denim dinner and said, we need to have barbecue with Nate. And so that was kind of like okay, now that gave me something solid that I could start to build around, oddly enough. So I'm like, okay, I will do a conference and there will be barbecue. so I made those two decisions immediately. There will be a conference. There will be a conference, and there will be barbecue at this conference. And so then I kind of got the ball rolling from there.
All right. So Grizz, fill in the rest of that story. How did I didn't know you were so instrumental in the launching of this thing. Tell us a little bit more.
Everything I say that people don't understand sits in their brain for a long time and then manifests in reality. Mm-hmm. So I just let the good ideas come through, and that happened. But the barbecue really, right, was one of the, as far as these events go, that was the newest addition. Like we have a newest experimental protocol, if you will, right? And that was fabulous. The live stream was pretty bad from the barbecue. It's as if they forgot how to put on the show, but it was great being the hummingbird floating around to the different groups and seeing what all had arrived there. It was a very special barbecue.
And Sherry, you also on Mark's live stream, you talked about how you had to really work hard to get Graham there. But what was your role behind the scenes and the starting of this? Of course, you're instrumental in Grail Country, and this is very much a Grail Country event. But so what part did you play?
Well, I feel like I didn't really play much of a part, actually. Nate and Sarah Eve did the bulk of the work, and Jess, I suppose, too, in the background, with all the webpage and so on. So I just kind of showed up and did my thing. I did want Graham to be there. And I can say why, because Michael Martin was speaking. And I actually told Michael this. I said, if you were just standing there alone, you would have been like a voice in the wilderness that might have just got blown away by the breeze. And I really wanted him and Graham to bookend their thoughts, together. And I, he said to me, Graham's my spirit animal. So I think that was a good decision. And so that's how it was for me. I'm just so far away from everything. It was really hard for me to actually get my hands dirty on this one. But Nate was amazing. Nate was amazing. And I have to say, like, the spirit, which was very tangible at this conference, the spirit that trickled down into this conference came from Mr. Nate Heil. And I can say that without crying, but if I talk about it any longer, I will.
I don't know if trickle is the right word. I mean, Saturday morning sort of started with a torrent. So
that's right.
But no, this was, and I'm not saying anything about the other conferences we had, but this was extremely well run. And part of what we're doing with the bubbling up of these events, you never quite know how it's going to go, but Nate really showed a lot of skill with this. And part of his skill was getting Jess involved. So
yes.
Jess was hugely instrumental in this. Jess, and I got to meet his wife. That was awesome. And she right that first day just put me right in my place. Typical mom, just like cut right in there. So Jess, you're no stranger to the channel. You're a very early rando.
I was trying to figure out when I did it. It was like 2018, 20 something. Yeah. And I talked about the book of Job. So,
So what was your, because for a long time, like, I don't know where Lance is right now, but it's pretty normal for people to kind of come and go in this space. But you and Lance were talking a lot about a Kansas City event, and that hasn't happened, at least so far. So how did you jump into this event, and tell me more about the role you played?
I think Nate just messaged me about, I forget what it was. It was either the website or possibly doing sound. And then I just sort of found my way into other places too, just to help out. And so did the recordings and the edits of the talks, and like the brochure and schedule, graphic design, like stuff like that. And so I think, I mean, working with Nate was great. And I think my preferred leadership style is Christian anarchist. So he just sort of let me do whatever. And everything worked out pretty well.
Super. And Luke Thompson, how would you like to introduce yourself, Luke Thompson? And I think in some ways you're the spirit animal of Grail Country.
Well, I don't know. I guess we've all been, Nate, I can't even remember exactly how you trickled into TLC, but I think we all became really close friends probably in the Boxer group. That's where most of Grail Country was starting. And all right, I have a child coming home for lunch. And we got to know each other there, and I don't know, we've always been really close friends, on and off screen, communicating a lot. I don't know, I didn't really have a role. Nate had Sherry and I do the panel discussions, kind of lead those, which my wife thought was a horrible idea because I talk too much. I don't think I talked too much. It ended up being all right. My favorite My
Awesome.
favorite part of the conference was.
We're not there yet, Luke.
Oh, sorry, we're not. How don't I'm introducing myself?
Yeah, we're not there yet. You know, there is some structure here. I know this Christian anarchy is very heavy at Grail Country, but there is some structure here. So the next thing is I'd like to hear from each of you in terms of the expectations you had for the conference and how the conference matched with your expectations. And you can go in any order. So if you want to continue, Luke, go ahead because you're already on a roll.
Okay. Well, the expectations were pretty high, but life is busy, so I didn't have a lot of time to be thinking about it that much until we got there. And it was, man, I don't know. It was, people said a lot. It lived up to expectations, I would say. It was very, it was intense. You almost feel like you need a sensory deprivation purge after a conference like that, because it was just so, I mean, for me as a fairly emotional person, like Sherry and I were just hugging and crying for about half the conference, I think. And just flailing around in the front row during Graham's presentation. It was all very good, but even like the estuaries, it was all things very Grail Country, all things that I like. It was very dark, and a lot of suffering was talked about, but yet it reminds me of lines of Aslan or something, like, you know, it's terribly wonderful or something, like frighteningly beautiful or something. A lot of laughing, a lot of crying. It was just a lot. Even two of the things that were unexpected was, I mean, it was a lot of oscillating back and forth between gravity and levity. So a lot of laughing, a lot of crying. Jess and I had a lot of fun just being silly together because we've known each other for a long time. But yeah, it was deeply meaningful and I think real. It was amazing to me how, I don't know if it's the particular spirit of this estuary or this conference, or it's the spirit of Estuary, but I think all the estuaries, from what I heard, people were profoundly impacted by them. And that was kind of in a lot of ways, that was the center of the conference, were the estuaries.
Yeah. And you know, the videos just did an amazing job recording all of this stuff, and the sound is great. And the videos will be released, but you're not going to get a sense of the power of the conference from the videos, even though there's some very powerful talks in there.
True.
What you said, I don't think I have ever been to a conference that had the wallop of this one. It was, and I thought you said it well. Anybody else want to talk about their expectations and then how the conference interacted with their expectations?
Well, I didn't know quite what to expect. I mean, I knew I liked everyone that I knew was going, but like we've only interacted online, and then I got to meet everyone, and everyone is way more beautiful in person. That's all. And
they're
so,
in color.
Yeah, and like 3D, like they had like shapes to their faces. It was almost surreal for a while there, and like I was sitting next to Chad at Nate's barbecue, and Chad's just like dumbfounded. He's just like, this is so strange, this is so weird. He's like, what the hell is happening? And so and the other aspect for me was that my wife was coming, and this is like she heard me talk about you guys, but she, you know, she's never really interested in watching a video or me reiterating conversations we had. Like she's never been like get off the Vox or anything like that. So she came in, and I was like, I hope it goes well. I anticipated it would, but I was like, what if we get there and everyone's like super awkward and weird, and she'll be like, what have you been doing talking to these people for so many years? and then I have to explain myself, and that would have been terrible. But luckily it didn't go that way. she like she kept saying like she get is it sorry I'm gonna get like choked up here.
No.
Isn't it amazing how God has brought all these people together? And like she understood sort of like she talked to all kinds of people that were there, and she understood like there's some eccentric people and some really cool people and some like all kinds of people, like and they all here together, and the only the only explanation is that God is doing something. So, so I guess you could say it kind of exceeded my expectations. It was heavy. It was full of like, I don't know if I've laughed so much in my life. Like it was crazy. And then I was like stationed in the sound booth in the back. And then after one sort of heavy, poignant talk, Paul was walking by and he looks up at me and he's like, "It's all that Job stuff. It's your fault." So it fit the Job vibe, and yeah, it was beautiful. And thanks to Nate and everyone.
Yeah. Anyone else on expectations? I've been to obviously a number of these conferences. I haven't been to all of them. I didn't get to the poetry one in Arkansas, which was a smaller one, but I think I've been to every other one probably. Grizz, you've been to a few now.
Yeah, I mean, if you count the Symbolic World one, right?
Oh, that's right. I didn't get to that one.
This, I expected it to be a giant cluster. Like, I was curious about speaker distribution in the estuary groups, but it feels like on the one level, there's like, yeah, God, the Holy Spirit's moving, pulling us all together, whatever. On the other level, it felt like a corporate training thing for Estuary Inc. Right? And
you mean getting grounded with Rafe?
No, not any of the presentations, but like the thing as a whole was like, this is going to sprout up like 40 more estuaries back all over the world because we're training people how to do this, and that was kind of neat. Like, and then I hear from like, I'm very curious about what happened in Luke's estuary group, because all the stories I hear are like how people like got all sentimental and emotional stuff, and my group was like 5th generational warfare, and but like 3 of the people in the group they put me in were estuary pros, so I think that extracting information from me was probably the goal of that assignment.
There's waterboarding, then there's estuary. Yes. How can we get it out of Grizz?
I was in Grimm's group, and he freely spoke. I don't think anyone was torturing him.
Sherry, expectations versus the experience.
Yeah, the whole time you guys are talking, I'm thinking, what were my expectations? And all I remember is my husband said to me when I was leaving that morning, he said, "Are you nervous about meeting all these people?" Because I often have like pre-jitters, right? And I'm like, no, I'm not. And I think it was really helpful to have my sister with me. I brought my sister with me. And
lovely.
The 2 reasons I brought her with me, one was I really wanted her to be part of the community. I wanted her to tie into it somehow. She has a very busy life, so. And then the other reason was I wanted her to see what I've been doing for like the last 6 years, because I'm just like nobody in my family, none of my friends, nobody knows, right? This is like a separate world. And then for me personally, I wanted to just touch everybody. Like, that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to touch everyone. I felt like a little butterfly, just going from flower to flower to flower, you know, meeting everybody. And yeah, I have to say, what, you know, surprisingly, what I came away with, I've been kicking and kicking against this mother matriarch moniker for me in the corner, because it just carries a lot of weight for me, for people to call me that.
Mm.
Now I'm going to cry.
Did you feel the role when you went there?
Well, here's the thing. My sister, you know, I said, oh, I just can't stop hugging people. We were back at the Airbnb. I said, I just can't stop hugging people. It just feels so good. And she said, how did she put that? She said something like, I thought you didn't want to be a mother. And I said, I don't. Right? A little sister fight. I don't. She goes, well, then why are you acting like one? And
Leave
I
it
just
to a sibling.
Boom. Right. And I thought, okay, I'll embrace that. I'm going to do that now. I have to do that. And then Corey said something to me, like, I think it was at your place, Nate. Corey said, oh, and Jeremy too. They both said to me that I reminded them of their grandmothers. And I'm like, oh, great.
That might just
I'm
be the
already
knitting.
graduated.
What's it like to have a brunch sprung on you?
Oh, I loved it.
I
loved it. I was
brunch.
like, if nobody shows up here, I'm going to cry, you know. And I went out. Actually, Slack was great. He was like my little knight in shining armor on the second day. Well, it was Slack and Grim were the first people to show up at my Airbnb, our Airbnb, and I just started throwing food on him. Like, okay, we got to keep these people here. I need a magnet, and I know that men love food, so I'm cooking. And it was good, right, Grim? It was fun.
It seemed like everybody coming into town and like getting to gather as people coming into town.
Yeah.
Plus getting the nice ladies at the Airbnb to cook for us that morning. It was all beautiful.
It was beautiful. Yeah.
Nate, you had the biggest run up to that thing, and you probably put in as many hours as anyone in planning that thing. And I know from experience that with an event like this, you put all of this stuff into it, and then the event is there, and then plus you're running it, so you can't sort of just enjoy the event. And I'm sure now you're really unpacking it. So what's that look like for you?
Well, I think it's the only thing I've ever done that I can honestly say exceeded expectations. I've done a lot of events in my life. I've never done a conference before, but I used to be a chef, and I've done a lot of catering, and I cook these big elaborate like family dinners for holidays and things like that. So I do a lot of entertaining, a lot of big elaborate events. And I'm always nitpicking after the fact, like, no matter how well it went, I'm always nitpicking after the fact about, well, I could have done this, I could have done that. I'm always thinking about process improvement. But in this case, I really wasn't thinking like that. I was just enjoying the fact that it happened and that it would win as well as it did. And so I actually was able to enjoy it. Good. Although historically, it's exactly like you say. Historically, I have not been able to enjoy the events that I've planned because I'm so results oriented that I can always think of something I could have done to make it better. But in this case, I was totally happy with it, and I wanted to talk about something that Sherry mentioned. I really wanted to thank John Slack. His name is John. He's actually somebody I forgot to thank during the event. and he was not a person I expected would step up to be as helpful as he was. It's just not his thing. Like, I mean, his Slack is his brand, right? So it's like, we've joked with him that his spirit. I don't know if anybody knows Crud Bump. He does he does, like, one of his songs is "I Don't Do Shit," and that's kind of like Slack's theme song, right? So I was very surprised that he just like completely stepped up and was so helpful and so great the whole time. He was like one of those people, along with, I mean, Maria, Jess's wife, was so helpful, and Sarah Eve. But yeah, Slack was just like unexpectedly awesome. Yeah, you don't have to call him Joe. You can call him Slack. But I really just wanted to express how much I also appreciated him, and then everybody that was there. I mean, it was just so much. It was just I had high expectations, but it was so much better even than I could have imagined.
Yeah,
you know. And I and this is one where, you know, I think I really poured myself into this. Like this I think, like, this event definitely was kind of a reflection of my temperament, my personality. I very much put the emphasis on hospitality and intimacy as much as possible. So
home run.
Yeah.
Well, Nate, I have to say that Slack took me grocery shopping, and I'm like, you poor guy, you have to go grocery shopping with a woman.
Well, what are you gonna buy? You're gonna buy meat, Sherry. I mean, what else are you gonna buy grocery shopping? Well, let's do a little estuary round 2 here. And what would you like to pitch in terms of this conversation to unpack this event for people who couldn't be there?
Micro celebrity supernova.
Oh, all right. Grim Grizz, micro celebrity supernova. Good. That's a nice. I like that in an estuary pitch. It's succinct. Of course, Grizz, you would. You know, I don't know why you don't run your own estuary. You would be killer in an estuary meeting. Anyone else got a pitch?
You go around and force them and make them say pass.
Yeah, I was gonna actually, after an estuary meeting recently, I was gonna do a best practices on estuary, sort of crowd into John Van Donk's thing, because John and I have some differences of opinion. Sherry, what would you like to pitch to the group?
Oh boy, I'm drawing a
Pass,
blank.
and I'll come back around to you.
Okay, I'll pass for now.
All right, Jess, what would you like to pitch to the group?
The estuary sessions were surprisingly good. One thing I thought was we spent a lot of time in estuary. So I think it was like 8 hours total over 2 days. Like, it was a lot of time, and it was with the same people every time. And so, like, Grim was in my group, as well as Corey and a couple new people who knew Paul Vanderklay, but weren't familiar with the corner. Like, they didn't know what TLC stood for.
You mean Lauren and Kara?
Yeah.
And Brian was another estuary guy.
Oh yeah, Brian was another experienced estuary guy. And so, but the group went surprisingly well, and I was interested what their experience were, the new people coming, and it seemed like it was great for them, even if we were talking about fifth dimensional warfare.
They had Grizz in their group. What do you expect? Nate, what do you want to pitch?
This is going to probably come as no surprise to anyone. But I think that one of the things that this particular conference reinforced, and I have to thank Karen for this bit. Initially, I wasn't sure that I was going to have the lunches catered in for the estuary. But then Karen was like, no. The conferences that happen around the conversations that happen around food at lunch are really important. You need to do it. And I was like, yeah, okay. So you sold, because Karen is one of the people I talked to as I was getting advice for planning it. And she was entirely right about that. So to summarize what I'm saying is that sitting down and eating a meal together is more important than we realize.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Luke, what do you want to pitch?
The only thing that's really coming to mind, is presence, just practicing presence, because that was something that was it was a challenge, because people would say they had FOMO for missing the conference, but it was something that I noticed repeatedly throughout the weekend. Is it was very hard to not have FOMO at the conference as well, because you're sitting there in a conversation, and out of your periphery there's all these other people that and you want to talk to, and people that kind of look like they're looking at you and want to talk to you, and just to be really centered in the conversation that you were having was that's why the estuaries are so good. The estuaries are just the constraint of an estuary really allows for that. And I think this is an ongoing conversation between Sam and I, and even thinking about Minneapolis conferences, and Sam's coming up, the Midwestuary, is TLC Christian YouTube stuff. I liked that it wasn't speaker centric. I really like that. Because that's what the TLC is all about.
All right.
I got one now.
Go ahead, Sherry.
I got one. Okay. And I consider this, it was like a real privilege to be able to see the whole thing through the eyes of people who had never had anything to do with the coroner. One was my sister, one was Graham Pardon. And I mean, I've always carried a little bit of a burden about the reality of this little corner, like this place on the internet. And so I'm just going to throw it out there. How real is this space that we find ourselves in, like right this minute online? And how, this is where all of this was born out of, right? And I know it's a question that has been constantly thrown up. And I've always tried to put it back down where it belongs, but to no avail sometimes. And so I want to talk about that.
All right. Wow. I usually don't pitch ideas, and I won't now because you guys already put a lot on the table, but I will begin round free. And Grizz, what did somebody else say that caught your snitch?
The correlation between Luke's presencing FOMO and some other guy's topic, and then how the realness of the place ties into that.
All right. Jess, what grabbed your salience landscape?
I don't know. I can't pass this round though, can I?
No, you can't pass this round. Something were you just daydreaming? You have to confess that to us. You were just sitting there like, crap, why did I come on this live stream? When I've got things I can do to make money and feed my family, and here I'm talking to these losers.
I actually muted you guys so I could listen to the rest of Matthew Peugeot. Sorry. No, I think yeah, what Luke said.
All right.
What did he say?
Like that, Luke. All right, good. Nate, what grabbed your salience landscape?
Yeah, I don't like Grimm's clever wordplay that ended with supernova that I cannot remember.
Micro celebrity supernova.
There we go. Micro celebrity supernova. I want to know what that means, because I want to explore it more, because I want to know what it means, because I don't know. I really can't. I need to know what it means before I can determine whether it's important or not. So I want to know what it means.
All right. Luke, what grabbed your salience landscape?
You're muted.
You're muted. Not on the StreamYard side. We couldn't hear you. You moved your lips. Are you just playing with us?
We can't hear you anymore.
Corn. Yeah, corn.
Oh, start signing, Luke. I mean, at least use sign language. We can't hear
Sorry.
you.
I'm sorry. Now better?
Oh, yeah.
Talk about daydreaming.
Oh my goodness. Well, I
You must have
wasn't.
been a wonder in elementary school. Your teachers must have loved you.
I was a wonder. Okay, that's what they told me. So, just how real the corner is. Yeah, that's my vote. How real.
And I'm voting. I'm voting for communion around meals at the table.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think somewhere a mixture of the micro celebrity supernova. Yeah, Grizz, you're deadly. Boy, Grizz is deadly. And Sherry's, the reality of the TLC and Luke's, sort of where the stage was demoted. That sort of caused mine, because I'm going to try, and I know Sam says it can't be done, and I know I'm going to piss a bunch of people off. I'm doing a Estuary retreat at my sister's place next month, and it's going to be severely limited in terms of people. And I know people are going to be dissatisfied with that. I have to have a process to so I'm going to start with my membership section. So the supporters get the first crack at the list, and then the no ads, and then the members, and then it goes out to the public. So I know a lot of people are really in favor of that hierarchy. Grizz still says I sold my supporter membership way too low, but
those tickets better be $3,000 a pop. But way to work in the grift right in the middle of this fascinating live stream, man. Well done,
MJ would be proud. So but as always, all the other topics will come in. So let's go, have at it. So Grizz, the micro celebrity thing was so interesting because it sort of connects with where Jess started in terms of, and I've seen this at every event we've done. The first, whether it's meeting at the airport or usually like the first meal or something, you get there and then it's like, oh, there's Grim Grizz. Oh, there's Jess. Oh, there's Nate. Especially for people, at least 80% of the TLC is invisible. 80% of the TLC never leaves a comment, never comes on a live stream, never. They just lurk. And then you get there, and there's all these people that you sort of feel but you don't know. And I mean, Chad was freaking out over barbecue. It was hilarious to watch. So, but then again, yeah, Sherry, the reality of this thing, and I don't know. I still am trying to get my mind around it.
Well, I just want to say I'm in the process of trying to coordinate a time, and I'm going to have Graham and Tracy and Megan, Karen's daughter, on to talk about their perspective on this, because Tracy and Graham and I talked a lot. I didn't really get a chance to talk much to Megan, but because I'm so, this is real, people, I'm like, I'm looking for backup. So I thought I'm gonna have them on, and I want this little corner to hear from the observers, the first timers, like the people who have like no clue, right?
Yeah.
Just maybe a hint, but not much, really.
Yeah.
So,
Grizz, what do you mean by micro celebrity? I mean, we know the word, but micro celebrity supernova.
We don't know the word. Nate was very confused about it. It's somebody who has a co-fi.com/grimgrizz page. The realness of the corner is way more real to me than most of everybody else who's experimenting. They're playing it like a video game. I mean, the console is your YouTube channel. But it's when people you don't know you. is the beginning of celebrity, and when like nobody outside X conditions would determines that you're a tiny. It's probably whatever nano. We're probably nano celebrities, but that's not as smooth. And so many in the same place, like the Pleiades cluster, like closing in on itself was pretty stellar. So there's the supernova part, right?
Nice.
Okay.
It was
But
it was funny because it was an interesting balance. Like I said, toward the end of the conference, the last day I was tired. And for somebody with like 96 percentile extroversion, I said I need to go back, or I told my wife when I got back, I said I need to be back around people that don't think I'm special.
Yes.
Because it was
That
nice.
is so super true, Luke. That is
Yeah.
super true. I have that experience a lot.
Yeah. But I mean, it's nice. It's nice to feel like for the commonality. I mean, one of the common TLC things is high in openness, contrarian, and also we tend to feel weird and like outsiders in our normal, everyday, embodied lives. And to be around a bunch of people who were like, I like the things that you say and I find you interesting and this is cool. It was just like, wow, this is not there's only so much of that I probably need. Like I'm not, need it in limited doses, which is kind of probably a little bit of the micro celebrity thing.
Is that kind of like a be careful what you wish for, Luke?
Yeah,
moment?
probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think, go ahead, Sherry.
Well, I was just going to say it was a little surreal to me. I had people saying things to me like, you've completely changed my life. I made these decisions. And I'm like, what? Oh my God. Like, what did I say? Like it's kind of terrifying actually. And, but yeah, it just made me more aware of what's coming out of my mouth, actually.
Makes one of us. I wanna spin back to the realness of the TLC. Like imagine a cabin in the woods that just sits there empty. Like, is that a place? Or is it the people and the attention spent in the place that makes it the place? And the amount of attention, especially if you throw in the attention of the lurkers into the making of a place, it's where interactions between characters happen, where the dialogue happens, that goes in the book of what actually happened. So it's real on levels more different than physical, but very, very real.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of Andy Warhol's comment about 15 minutes of fame. The TLC is sort of stretching that out into micro communities because, of course, when Andy Warhol made that statement, you had mass media. That was the only kind of media. And you had all the structures around that. But, authors have had this for a long time, of course. We have these different platforms. And so Aaron McIntyre and Benjamin Boyce were having a conversation, and I made a little clip and put it on Twitter. I played it on today's video too, where I heard Aaron sort of processing that. And Aaron was somebody who started as sort of as he said, he started as an NPC, or he started as he didn't use rando, he used a different word. And then, of course, as a significant platform and following. And so this is something to sort of figure out. But of course, this happens in churches all the time. And that's one of the things that has been a predominant observation of mine as I've gone through this journey, that there's so many analogs in church. Because I remember going to, say, Madison Square Church when I was a college student, and there was a hierarchy. There were the pastors and the deacons and the elders and the old time members, and you go to a church long enough and the same people make prayer requests, and you become like minor celebrities in a face-to-face community. But Grizz, you said it so well. People don't know, when people you don't know you is the beginning of celebrity. That's super, super true.
There's a interesting bit too, is that the way they know us is not us performing scripts or, well, the way they know you guys is just you being yourself in dialogue, and so they know you in a less artificial way than celebrity is generally understood, which is interesting.
Well, yeah, Graham, and that's actually what you just said there. Because we're known through dialogue, we're known in a less artificial way. This is precisely why I put the speakers in the estuary groups.
Yeah, and that was a really good move.
And I think that, Nate, that is something that speakers are often exempt from things because because we had so little talking time, you didn't need to have a 2-hour presentation. Okay, we're going to ask a little bit of you, but what we're really going to ask of you is presence in the estuary groups.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because that's, I mean, and part of that is really personalist knowing, right? Because do you get to know people through an academic, didactic presentation of emissarianism, or do you get to know them in an estuary where you're talking about your life? And that's what TLC has been. I mean, that's how I got to know all you. I mean, minus Graham. Graham, you're still keeping yourself at a distance.
Well, that's right. That's right. Because the people that I invited as speakers for this are people that either already get TLC and are part of TLC, like Paul, who I knew would understand what I was doing intuitively,
right?
Or they're people who I think should be a part of what we're doing because they have a lot to bring to it. And so I wanted to show the true side of it and give them an authentic experience instead of just like, hey, do this 1-hour presentation and, I'll pay you some money and that's the end of it.
Yeah. No, that was genius, Nate.
Well, and yeah, it was a super sneaky part of colonizing because, I mean, and even the first round here, when we talked about the fact now, of course, Jess brought his wife, Nate's wife was deeply involved. Grim doesn't have a wife. Sherry's husband, my wife, Luke's wife, non-participants, and that's absolutely fair. And part of the thing you learn, again, as a pastor, you really have to begin to learn the modulation between your family. Your family is not your sermon illustration. You may be able to use them, but you really got to be careful with that. But to ask speakers to bring themselves into the space, and because I generally, part of the reality of these conferences is because I'm really thinking about, how am I going to use living stones and what sort of new thing should we carve out in this thing that we're building here. But we have speakers to a degree because that makes the conference work for some people. Because I have, it's like, it's so weird because I have Estuary every Sunday morning at 9:00 at Living Stones for free. I mean, if you want to be in an Estuary group with me, Sunday morning, 9:00. How's that, Brand? How's that? And plenty of empty chairs. It's not but I do 2 whole days of solid estuary and a really cozy, nice spot, and it's going to cost some money, and it's going to fill up. I don't know how many levels of membership I'll get through before it fills. So we are sort of trying to figure out how to deconstruct celebrity culture without losing what celebrity. I mean, there's no question when we look at someone like Chris Green or John Vervaeke or Jonathan Peugeot or Michael Martin, that these are exceptional individuals. And their exceptionality requires something, but it is a performance. And so we're asking them to, okay, we want you to do your little performance on stage. We know that you feel comfortable and this is your calling, your shtick. We get that. But we'd like you to come off the stage and sit in a circle with randos and participate.
I want to throw in that if you pay attention to Michael Martin's presentation, he referenced like the experience of the estuary was enough for him to like it be top of mind and something he included to talk about.
Yeah, several times, actually, multiple references. I noticed that too, Graham.
Well, I can say that Michael Martin has actually really modeled well what it means to be celebrity. I mean, the man is published. He knows a lot of people who are, well known, let's say, quasi famous in certain.
Martin Shaw wrote an endorsement for his latest volume of poetry. So yeah.
Niche. Yeah. Yeah. He edits for David Bentley Hart, but Michael has always remained very, very grounded and part of community. And that's always been a strong point for him. Like, Michael never feels, to me, even in the online interactions, like that I first actually met him through Meditations on the Tarot. And he quickly set me at ease. Like, just, I was really nervous about talking to this guy. Like, he was talking to my sister at one point at the conference, and she's like, "Oh my God." He said, "Yeah, there's like the Alexandrian library in there, just so you know." But he's just very real. And I think that's, at least for me, that is, it's possible. It's possible to stay really real. And I think it's actually necessary. Like, when we sequester ourselves off, like not having the speakers in the estuary groups, for example, we do these, I don't know, social protocols or social etiquettes that we think are, should be. We can, those are things we can break down fairly quickly and fairly easily and allow for true community and true communion, So, yeah.
So one of the things that we're sort of trying to, what's the right word? We're trying to benefit from the dynamics of celebrity, which is an extraordinary giftedness that requires certain platforms and forms for distributing the gifts to a broader group, while also trying to mitigate the reality of celebrity, which is a lot of the nasty things that come with it. And I think actually this conference did that really well. And part of it was, of course, the selection of the speakers and that. But then again, when I think about the celebrities, even in the broader corner here, I could see Jordan Peterson, John Vervaeke, Jonathan Peugeot easily operating well in an estuary context.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that's the humanizing part of it. Like,
I think it would be nice for them too. Like, don't you think?
I think it would.
Yeah.
In an estuary, people, that's probably one of the things I came away from the conference too, is just how just unbelievably amazing all people are. They're really amazing. Like, I don't know, I think Jordan Peterson has said that before. Like, if you find someone boring, the problem's you. And estuary brings that out. If you're really present with someone, listening to them talk about their lives, they're unbelievably amazing.
And what struck me about, now I have a lot of questions because I'm doing 15 at this thing. And so there might be times that I split into two because 15 is really sort of large for one conversation. But I so noticed in the 8 hours of concentration, plus you need sort of in, out, you need breaks, you need rest, you need all of that. But the people in my group, they just were transparent. But even so, some members of the group, they started out here, and then as they could see that the people in the room could be trusted, more disclosure, more disclosure, more disclosure, letting people speak into their lives. Most people didn't, really take the bait of trying to give advice or some of these other things that usually don't work or don't work well. But I was, I should know because I do this thing all the time. but I was deeply moved by just the power of this event. And the another dynamic of this is, so of course many of the people in my estuary group knew me, and some had, part of the difficulty for me at these events is I have to connect names and faces with their internet avatars, and that's always difficult. And I understand avatars on the internet is a necessary thing for a lot of people to play in this space. But, you know, once, like, there's one person in my group, he, at the end, he told me, it was the last day we'd say goodbye, he told me what his avatar was. And well, now I see him on Twitter and I see him in the comment section. And a lot of people who are very low in agreeableness are drawn to this space. It's one of the things I noticed right away with the Jordan Peterson meetups. And people who are low in agreeableness, you know, the way those people work in, you ready to come back in, Grizz? You can vape in there. Rick does it all the time.
No, I was
state of California.
I was wondering if Living Stones had a bathroom.
Oh, did you find it?
No.
Oh, across the sanctuary. Don't pee in the urinal. When you start peeing in the urinal, you'll see exactly why. But there are 2 bathrooms across the sanctuary and a door on the other end.
All right, thank you.
I wondered if Living Stones has a bath. So where was I going with this? The community of the disagreeables. There's a lot of that in the TLC, and disagreeables. I think that's part of the man-woman dynamic in the TLC too, is that women are higher in agreeableness, men are higher in disagreeableness. And there are a lot of disagreeable men in this space, and they say what they think, which I personally love. I don't care if a man says all kinds of shit to me. If I have a sense that they're speaking truthfully to me, honestly to me, I'll bypass all the insults. I don't give a shit about that. But
you
I want
that very well in the Jacob live stream, by the way, Paul.
Yeah, I don't care if people call me an asshole. I mean, and that's a reality. Grim might get a sense of it. I mean, I get people threatening my life on a regular basis. They're homeless people, and that's what they do sometimes. But you know, but I'm also a large man, so I'm not vulnerable in that sense. So it's interesting that I think part of the intensive estuary process allowed even highly disagreeable people to show another side, often show a soft side.
I think people are disagreeable when it comes to ideas, but when they're with other people, what are you going to argue about?
When someone's talking about their life, their testimony, this is the rando's heart. What are you going to argue with?
Or you're giving them a hug. It's like, yeah, no, that wasn't great. You know what I mean? Like it's yeah, I was just mentioning this on the Grail Country Discord yesterday. You know, I'm really asking the question, how do we get out of the head space in a virtual space? And well, I'm a woman. Okay. So how do we get into the heart and out of the head? Because that's where the arguments happen, right? The arguments are coming out of, you know, and I actually think most of them are misperceptions, you know. That's why people end up having to define their words and, you know, get into the nitty-gritty of the thing, because everybody has a perception of how they see the world. And I mean, I don't know. The only thing I can come up with is stories and poetry. You know, we need more stories. We need more poetry. We need, you know, but of course that's, you know, that's not everybody's thing. So, but that will be my future contribution to this space, for sure.
Well, but no, with a poem or a story though, Sherry, you can communicate something in a way that is, they don't make an argument, right? A poem or a story can show you something.
Like McDonald says, it wakes something in you, right? And it resonates because I've been talking about this before, but the biggest problem we have in communication, and I'm not talking about special people, I'm talking about every person, is getting our meaning across. And a story is so multivalent that it means something to everyone who hears it. It doesn't mean the same thing, but it means something, right? And so, and I'm happy with that. It's like, you know, when I gave my kids birthday parties and I had little party bags for the kids to take home, you know, here you go, kids, everybody take your party bag and go, you know, you hear the story and you get the party bag and you go home and you let that just, you know, weep into your life, right?
I think where we can get though, this is Jess and I have been talking about this with non-dualism, is I think it's possible. I think this is what Jordan Hall means by transcendent mind, what I mean by iconic thinking. I think you can get into the multivalence of propositions too. It's just it's just a different way of being.
But the question was, how do we bring in the heart? Not like the fancy things you do with words is also neat. The only thing I had was like, if you bookend your purpose, like, hello, as we gather here today to talk about the thinky brainy things, we do it in the spirit of love and compassion, and then like close with something like that. Otherwise, it's just got to come out through the people while they're doing it.
Well, I think, Sherry, that was what made this conference different and impactful more than any of the other conferences we've had so far, is people got to the level of the heart.
Yes.
And of course, Nate and Rafe, you know, certainly, you know, threw testosterone on that little mission, or gasoline on that fire. But you know, this conference, it was interesting because the savings throws that are in the membership section, some more grift going on here. In the membership section, I captured Grim Grizz doing his savings throws for the conference. All the other things got very high savings throws. Heart was terrible. I always pick heart, so I pay attention to heart. Heart was like terrible. So the whole conference lost its savings throw for heart. And so the mind control was fast and furious at this conference with respect to heart.
That's the access route.
Well, I want to throw in Rod's here's Rod's question. For any panelists, do you think of Estuary as an essentially religious project, or wait, where's the second one? You had two there.
Or what?
Did I lose it?
I didn't see a second one, or not,
I think
or whatever,
or whatever. Okay, so
yeah,
because that is another deep theme going on here, and you know the video I released Thursday morning, Heather Hying, in that Dad Saves America conversation. Like, many of my friends are, you know, they're really interested in religion, and that's Rafe Kelly's. My right brain says I'm a Christian. My left brain looks at my right brain like, what? You know, how could you betray us like this? We should take that meme, you know, of the girlfriend, and you know, the new girl is Christianity, and the right brain says, and the left brain is like. So I know mostly not working. You'll have that on Twitter within minutes. I know you will.
Well, I'd like to tackle this first because I don't have an estuary, and I told Paul in Mark Parker's live stream that I had misgivings about estuary, and I know Nate and Luke and Jess can all testify to that when it first came out. Nate, you converted me, by the way. 8 hours of estuary.
Nate gets an achievement badge on colonizing like you wouldn't believe from this conference.
Yeah, but Rod, I actually thought it was an essentially religious project, and that's what gave me my misgivings about it, because just for personal
Sneaky
reasons.
pastor tricks, that Vanderclay.
Sneaky pastor tricks. That's right. And I don't think that's what it is. It's creating a space, and I've been thinking about it more. It's creating a space in a world that has lost its ability to commune. I don't think Estuary would take off the way it is if we didn't live in the times we live in. Like, people have actually stopped talking to each other because they're afraid to reveal their party affiliations, how they feel about the climate crisis, what the vaccine meant. Like, there's just so many dividing lines in our culture today that nobody can openly speak to each other. They talk about the weather, right?
Instead of the crush we all have on Luke Thompson.
So anyway, I just wanted to give my 2 cents because I was actually there and I'm not there now. And that's like, you just moved a mountain, Nate, just so you know.
Well, I'm glad that you changed your mind. Although I would say, I would answer this question that it is essentially religious, but again, it has to do with how I understand the word religious and what that means.
Well, maybe you
because I don't know. Because to me, it's like, what do you think is not religious? Like, what separation do you think that you're making exactly?
Yes, of course.
Well, here you go, Rod. I know you know David Dark. Life's too short to pretend you're not religious. One of his books.
Yes.
Everything's religious.
One of the people in our group, she was Christian, and I was asking her, she was one of them that had never heard of Estuary, knew of Paul Vanderclay, and nothing of the TLC. And so this was all new to her. And I asked her like what her impression was, and like if she could see herself doing, like if Estuary would be useful for her, or how she could see it. And her response was basically like she wished it was more religious. So she mentioned I'd like some prayer involved and stuff like that. And so I remember Paul had talked about, well, he said this once to frame it, and it always stuck with me, but Estuary is like a service. You're providing a space for people to think. It's like a food bank. So there's Bible studies and there's prayer meetings that you can be a part of. What Estuary is not really that. It's this other thing. And as a service. And so with that framing, like I said that to her, that's kind of what the point is. And she immediately got it, was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah.
Could I just say one thing, Paul?
No, Cher, you can't. What, do you think this is an Estuary meeting? You can speak your mind?
Marcus Shira is saying that, build your house on the rock, not on an estuary. It's not essentially religious. And it took me back to when you said, Paul, that you never saw people go so deep before. And when you were talking about that, I was thinking, when that's happening, people are being healed. And I don't know if they know that that's happening to them, right? But that is what community and communion, true communion with other people does. It heals us. And as far as I'm concerned, that is what God is doing. So, yes, Nate, religious. I agree with you. But then again, back to what I said earlier, we all have our own perceptions of these words, right? And so what does that mean to each and every one of us? For me, it meant, being cut off, treated badly. It meant a lot of things, right? That, that I had to get over, and I think that's why John Vervaeke is trying to develop his own lingo around these things, because it's like he said in his Meaning Crisis series, these things have become so ossified that they actually become the ground upon which we walk, but we need to revive them. And so he says religio, right, instead. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
In Estuary grew out of my frustration with church.
Mm.
Really. In that I saw something that needed to happen, and it does happen in church. For example, I talk about Madison Square sometime, this church that I went to in college. We had healing services. And what those healing services was a Sunday night, and there were prayer, there were teams of people who would pray for you, and there'd be some anointing oils, little quasi, charismatic, but mostly what happened was, there was music playing, and you would sit there and pray, and then you could just go up and people would pray for you. And that was a powerful thing. But we're dealing with a deeply a culture that has turned to secularism because they couldn't stand a lot of religious bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And so let me read. Sherry mentioned Nate had seen what I'd written for CRC Voices.
Oh, good.
It's it's good.
Your typical person here, and this is hard for people to describe, to kind of picture, because again, most of this is invisible. Your typical person here probably 8 years ago was a skeptic or a nun or a dun. Now many are in churches, and as one speaker said, I'm amazed that my right brain, that with my right brain I say I'm a Christian, but my left brain is still shocked to hear it coming out of my mouth. Now, many people. How many people at that conference are now going to church? Maybe 50, 60%, which is a big number for Pacific Northwest, especially. But even many of the people going to church, I had many conversations where people, they said, like you said, Sherry, they said, thank you, because I'm going to church. But I feel often in church like a fraud because I don't believe all the things. I have real doubts. And it's really awkward because I go to church. Churches are like, starving babies. They grab anything that they think might feed them. And so, okay, you're going to be on the council. It's like, I'm not even sure I believe in God. Doesn't matter. You're in leadership now. So many are struggling with singleness, loneliness, skepticism and doubt, desire to fully give themselves to faith and the church, but still sort of nursing old wounds and doubts, struggling through trauma from parents' divorces or their own divorce. Many very smart people wrestling with the meaning crisis. Many people there have made real progress in the last 5 years. Lots of testimonies about that. But they came ready to use the Estuary process to dive deep and learn from each other. The whole conference was broken up into Estuary groups of 6 to 8, and everyone, including the speakers, participated. I told Len Vandersees, Len, you would have loved the whole thing. I don't know if I've experienced a conference with so much power, not just powerful speakers, but powerful things happening with people participating in these small groups. And so the power did come from the bottom. The power came not because speakers were transparent, which they were, but because people opened up themselves, and what that led to was a powerful movement, I'll first say, of spirit, and I do think of the spirit, where people could work on their healing. And so we had in our group, we had one person that about 3 or 4 hours into it disclosed, actually, I'm a therapist by trade. And I thought, oh, and we talked about how I actually have a fair amount of therapists that contact me in deep frustration about their trade. And I'm a pastor in deep frustration about my trade. And he was talking about, the healing that he needed. And was this really like therapy? No, because there's no expert in the room.
Mm-mm.
And that isn't, again, to demean. I mean, someone could ask, is Estuary, does Estuary belong to the domain of therapy? Because when you're really asking the question, Rod, you're asking, does it belong to the domain of church? And that's why I've always said Estuary is church adjacent. I want churches to host these spaces, and this is Vendonk and I, when we talk to churches, this is the negotiation we have. It's not really a negotiation because it's a hard line with us. is that you could take the estuary protocol and use it for your Bible study. Sure. But if you're going to have an estuary, if you're going to use that word for it, it needs to be church adjacent. And that's why I don't open and close with prayer. As hard as that is for me, at the end of the 8 hours, I so wanted to close our group in prayer. I so did, but I held back.
Raj closed our session with the Lord's Prayer. So how about that?
We have a Sikh closing this session with the Lord's Prayer.
Did he really? That's amazing.
It is.
The metaphor itself is inherently religious. It's like living as fresh water, but I think it's since we're in Aaron Wren's negative world that a lot of the times churches are the salt water. I don't know.
Grizz, nailing it again.
It seems like they need the life, like you said, they're hungry. They'll eat you up if you just go into the church, right? but maybe if they come out here, they can feed. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, that's the ossification Joy was talking about, or the preaching to the choir. That's where you don't have the freedom to say what you actually think, because you can only say the statement of faith or the confessions, or else you'll get booted. I mean, or at least they'll listen for a while until you don't get on board, and then you're out.
You know, when you're talking about all this, I'm thinking about when I went to see Martin Shaw actually do his storytelling thing. And I was with a woman who was in her 70s, and she was from an evangelical church. And so for her, it was like, she was like, you know, and afterwards, she was really impressed with it. Like, not just the storytelling, not just the show, but the content of the stories, the audience participation, the way people were impacted, the number of diverse people in the room. And she had a religious experience, right? And we were hashing that out over and over again together. She was trying to figure it out. Finally I said to her, I said, listen, for millennia, human beings gathered around a campfire and told sacred stories. Stories of their exploits, stories of their fears, stories of their hearts, right? That's church. That's what church is or should be. And that's why it feels like church should be, right? And I think that's actually, just listening to you talking about it, Paul, I was thinking that's what's happening in the estuary groups. The only thing that's missing for me is a campfire. An actual campfire.
Well, in the talk I gave in the 2023 Breakwater event, I noted, you know, you look at the Orthodox, it's like the liturgy, the liturgy, the liturgy. You look at the Catholics, it's the Eucharist, the Eucharist, the Eucharist. You look at the Protestants, it's the preaching of the word, the preaching of the word, the preaching of the word. And I think we're coming into a new era where it's the communion of the saints.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
We're working our way through the Apostles' Creed.
Perfect. That's very good.
Well, no, I think that's right. Yeah. Before you said that, I was just getting ready to ask you, Paul, whether you think that like estuary is kind of like, and actually to build on your point, Graham, that the church can actually benefit from the estuary too, because sometimes the church has become saltwater, right? And needs some fresh water infusion from outside itself. And there's a way in which like estuary is kind of like showing a potential future states of the church, right? Because I don't think does anyone actually think that 200 years from now that we'll still be doing church in the same way that we are now? That seems highly unlikely.
Church will continue to be done, just like the Orthodox are there, and the I mean, there still be the layers, which is really wonderful. We'll still see all the layers, like all that land Grizz is going to drive through on his way back home to Oklahoma. But this is the layer that the secular culture needs now for the leaves, or for the healing of the nations. And I thought Sherry was right, and and the people, Rod said it. I mean, and I've said it many times. People look at a church and so many think that's the last place I would go for the living water I so am thirsty for.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, in church, and I've always known this, okay, preacher preaches a good sermon. Sermons are wonderful. Good sermons are great. They're transformative. Eucharist, it's wonderful. It's great. It's transformative. Liturgy, it's wonderful. It's great. It's transformative. Church is not a building. The church is not a resting place. The church is the people. It's the little song you learned when you were a kid, if you were anywhere around church.
Yeah. Well, I think, it's interesting, Paul, because you actually lead Estuary yourself, and the rector of my church is deeply involved with our Estuary group. So I think there's some people seem to have like this sense of what Estuary is doing and the need that it's filling.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope that more people, more pastors, more rectors, more priests start to see that and welcome Estuary into their spaces.
Is that what you were modeling? Were you modeling your hope for the future of the church by including all the speakers in the Estuary groups?
Well, I don't know if I was consciously doing that.
No, I don't think you were consciously doing it, but
no.
Somehow I think it trickled in there, Nate.
I certainly was. I mean, I will say this. I will say that if you wanted to like tie what I was doing together, like in terms of like the hospitality aspect and putting the speakers into the Estuary groups, I think you could use the word communion to summarize what I was attempting to do.
Of course,
for sure.
Well, this gets to your topic of communion around a table, right? Like,
yeah.
Like when you said that, I mean that it's like my illustration of the campfire as a church where sacred stories are told, and those stories are of course personal, right? The hunting trip, the childbirth, the this, the that, right? And then either the first or second part of that campfire is eating together, sharing food.
Right. Yeah, and also campfires do not scare me, and it does not cause me to burn the barbecue. I'm actually quite good with live fire cooking.
Nate, that meat that you serve, Nate, that barbecue, all the food at that part. Again, I told you, I said, I have grown up eating the greens of women who learned how to cook greens in the South on wood fires. So if you're going to serve greens here, it had better be good. And it was good. So.
But did you get any of the rhubarb pie?
I did. It was good too.
He did.
Rhubarb pie was insane.
Karen did not want to miss out on rhubarb pie, so I had Ella make a second rhubarb pie to take out Friday night for Karen and the speakers when I made them dinner.
Okay, if anybody in the audience wants to ask a question, I will drop the link at 12 at the top of the hour for I'll call it the fishbowl, where all of our speakers, if they've got to go somewhere, they can be released. Any of you want to stay, you can stay. Those who want to come in can come in. But if you're Andrew, nobody's going to be able to hang out on the screen and not contribute. Okay. If you just want to listen, you can go off screen and just watch on YouTube. But if you have something to say, you can come on screen. And so we'll do that for another half hour. I don't know what Grizz's schedule is, but I want to get a chance to hang with him a little bit too. So first questions. You have a question? Oh, there's one. Spatch has a question. What is this question? Did GM Grizz kill anyone's character in his RPG?
First of all, none of what happened in the RPG is released content. That's super VIP paywall stuff. But I wasn't GMing. Slack was. It was fabulous, and I saved Corey from being crushed by something.
All right, Mandy, a very regular at Bridges of Meaning. Did being micro celebs hinder your own participation at all? That's a really good question.
No,
not me.
No, not you. No.
I think basically everyone here is pretty much themselves.
Yeah,
everywhere.
But that is a good question, because, for example, when we do conferences with Vervaeke and Peugeot, it is. I mean, you will get a feeding frenzy around these guys, and it can be a problem. And so I think that's part of what. And so we're going to be. I mean, not only are we playing with a lot of things in this corner, we're also playing with conferences now, and 80 was a really nice size. And there's a place for big conferences and a place for, like, I'm going to do a 15 now. There's a place for the different sizes, but yeah, it's go ahead.
To that question though, do you think there's a limit to status and hierarchy where you wouldn't be, like, to celebrity, where you wouldn't really be able to participate? Because, like, this came up, and I was talking to Sam with his conversation with Alistair McGrath, and it just felt, I don't know. I haven't even watched it yet, but the general vibe that I got is that it wasn't super in depth, and part of that is because there are levels. Or PVK, maybe this is for you. Being a pastor, can you fully participate with total openness and vulnerability in an estuary? I would assume not.
There are limits, but I think there should be limits for all of us.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, people who are married aren't going to bring their spouse's stuff into the room.
Correct.
But you're right in that with someone, depending on their level of celebrity, secrets and disclosures have higher potential cashable value out there in the world. You know, and so that you're looking at something that's right. That's true.
I think in this particular case, the supernova of micro celebrities made that not an issue, because, like, Foxman was there, Chad was there, Mark Parker was there.
Yeah.
These guys were all there. The speakers were there. So, like, I think there was plenty to go around, and nobody was really hindered by it.
Well, and you know, Chris Green ended up playing Professor in our estuary, but we were cool with it. Wouldn't have happened if he was not a micro celeb. So yeah, Chris Green he's just super smart, really good to listen to. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to try and get at some more of these questions. McMo, did Kayfabe participate in the estuaries?
He was participating in his own estuary at Slack's house.
All right. What was the most surprising observation about the invisible online randos who showed up in person at the conference?
So surprising.
I met one named Amy who told me, like, the story of how she was teaching kids stories as long as they let her, and how it was similar to the LARPgate stuff. And that was, I didn't make an observation about it, but it's really neat to, like, people to be proud, like, to share their work with you that they feel aligns with yours. That's touching. So
I would say that some of them are bright and shining stars that we just haven't discovered yet, would be what I would say. I have, like, one young woman in particular who just, like, struck me as just, like, an extraordinary person, who I had not really had a chance to interact with much on streams before or anything like that, and just got to know her through the conference, and she was just, I was like, Joy, I mean, Joy, show up more, because you're amazing. My goodness, you have so much to give to this space. So
yeah, I agree. All the unknown lurker randos are really cool. I think part of it is just like, I spoke with a particular gentleman who may watch this the week before, who had never been online, and he emailed me, and people are just really cool. It's just not everyone is as comfortable doing this, and that's totally fine.
All right, Rod Hare wants to know, yay or nay on rhubarb pie as part of the conference liturgy?
Always at the VIP events, not part of the liturgy for the conference.
Don't give away the grift. There you go. Matthew asks, the healing you all talk about, for whom, from what, to what?
I saw that question, and I wanted to put it in these terms because I did say when there's when healing is happening, we're not always aware of it. And it reminds me of the balm of Gilead, right? It's just like, it's something that is applied in that setting, that just works its way in and knits things together for people. And it takes time. And not everybody is actually aware of what just happened to them.
Yeah.
But they know something has changed, you know?
Well, I've talked to a lot about this with Lance. And well, Luke too. This is Luke's whole thing about divided man. Like for me personally, one of the things that Jordan Peterson had an effect on me was like I had this divide between religion and science, basically, or my faith and then the material facts on the ground or something. And he just smashed those together. There wasn't a divide anymore, and that whole experience was healing. Like and you know, you can say it was all up in the idea world, but it was. It was profoundly personal for me and very, very real, to like transformative, really. And so one of the things that Estuary facilitates is the ability to just talk through these things, and when those integrations happen, it's literally a healing event.
All right.
I want to just throw out the low-hanging fruit of people being healed from the notion that I don't have anything worth saying, nobody will listen to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Cassandra notes, I would like an introvert's review of the estuary experience. My read is that most of everyone that participates is very talky.
I think a lot of people that go are introverts.
I am an introvert, Cassandra, just so you know.
Yeah, I'm an introvert too. Maybe not as introverted as others, but we had several introverts in the group. But the way that Estuary is structured, so you go around, introduce yourself when people are new, then you go around, everyone says something as a topic, then you go around and then you say something about someone else's topic. That whole sort of leveling experience sort of gives every introvert a chance to speak. It even like levels a little bit of if you had a celebrity in your room, or it kind of levels that as well, because everyone gets a chance to talk, and you know, some people talk a little longer than others, but not really. So that whole thing that starts the estuary process really helps introverts get into it, and plus group size when it's 6 to 8, 10.
Yeah. My son Kenneth, who participated, is extremely introverted, and he really found it very rewarding. And he's like a real introvert. In fact, he did have to like not go the second day because his social battery was just like completely overloaded. But he really did have a good time, and he re-engaged again. There was some folks came over in the evening on Sunday, and we're hanging out. That were people that he had met, including Sherry. And Sherry was there, Graham was there, Joy was there, and he came out again, and just he really enjoyed that experience too. So it's definitely for introverts.
All right. Do any of you have plans to make pilgrimages to estuaries of those you met at the event?
Yes. I actually have made promises that there are some estuaries that are starting up that are geographically close to me. I have made promises to go and show up when they start up their estuary.
Yeah, I will be. President Foxman is starting an estuary in Bellingham.
That's one of the ones I promised to be at.
Yep, I'll be there November 10.
Yeah,
and to help President Foxman get going. All right, Aaron wants to know how to begin thinking of organizing a 50-50 Europe-U.S. estuary festival. What would be a good neutral location?
Canada.
Greenland?
No, I'm just kidding.
Rural British Columbia.
Yeah.
I'd say, probably like the UK is the most intermediary.
Actually, geographically, it's Iceland, just so you know.
Oh,
5 hours to Iceland, 5 hours.
Bahamas?
Bahamas?
Bahamas seem in between.
Bahamas.
Yeah.
The US US Europe dynamic is so interesting because I've been, Donka's over there or just finishing his tour now. I've been over there twice and I'm sure I'll go again. It is so much harder to get things moving in Europe than in North America. I mean, our common language, our huge population, the networks that are created. Europe is really tough. The language barriers, the costs, the relative Europeans just don't have as much money as North Americans. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. So I have a world of respect for our European brothers and sisters because we've got some amazing leaders there in Europe. Like Tayo is Pope of, Tayo and Matthias. I mean, we have some, and Cassidy, we have some huge, important leaders there, but boy, do they have hard, tough sledding. So, yeah. And we, we're continuing to try to think about how we can support the Europeans. So
I would love to be the meat in a Vanna Os boy brother sandwich. Just squeeze me in there.
I don't want to even know what that means. Okay. Are you aware of other estuary-like efforts, groups? How would you work with such a group in your town when it comes to community protocols?
We would rumble it out like the newscasters in Anchor, Maine.
That's right. Kill them with tridents.
It's interesting. Chad, of course, found the House of Ill. I don't remember this other group but also Megan Doms. I was amazed when I listened to that podcast and discovered that Megan Dom was doing basically similar to what I'm doing in Connecticut. She's doing that with women, and they don't have an estuary protocol. They bring in speakers. So there was a thing going through the church for a while called the Unconference that in some ways was similar, where they wanted to sort of de-emphasize the stage and emphasize. A couple of people recently have pointed me to Michael Putz out there. I want to shout out to Michael and Warren Mills, who brought me to Australia a number of years ago. M. Scott Peck, The Road Less Traveled.
Oh, yeah.
M. Scott Peck tried to create a similar thing out in churches of groups, T groups, I think Warren called them. And so there have been a whole variety of efforts to do similar things to this over the years. But
I think
but I think part of what's unique here is that we have sort of internet and local. That's sort of unique about what we're doing.
And this emerged out of real relationships first. It wasn't just like an institution that then tried to cultivate the relationships in some kind of abstract way.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Well, I think you'll find this kind of interesting, Paul. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when I lived in Switzerland, I'm trying to think what year it was that we started doing it. It was about 1994. We started, a friend of mine who was a musician, and him and I did music together. We decided to bring in Christian bands who weren't like overtly Christian, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
To neutral venues, like not church venues, right? But like we'd rent a space, and we had this one space in this one town in Switzerland, which was, for all kinds of events, right? And we did that once a month. We brought in musicians and had concerts, and we kept it like very neutral as far as like any kind of Christian message, no prayers, no nothing. It was just in a concert. And then just before I left to come back to Canada, he started doing a Sunday like that at it was a venue that was kind of known. They have this in Switzerland, they call them alternative people. They were like hippies, I guess you'd call it. They had their own venue for stuff, and he held it there, and it was breakfast and music and lunch, and that was it. And there was nothing Christian about it. that really, I think it's still going today, actually, still happening there. And then my neighbor to me here, she has a YouTube channel. She does this, it's called Little Mountain Ranch, if anybody's interested. And it's just like farming, homesteading, canning, gardening, all that stuff. But her and her husband are Baha'i, or were Baha'i, came out of a Christian family, have been Baha'i for like 20 years. During COVID, fell out of love with the Baha'i faith. And then we're just kind of floating around going, what's happening? And got together with a Jewish guy, a Muslim guy, an atheist guy, right? A Christian guy. And just at their home. And then because of her YouTube channel, she's now developed a community. Like she's got, members only, and she's got a web page, and, she does a lot of extracurricular away from YouTube stuff. And now they're building bunkies on their property and RV sites, and they're hosting retreats in the same spirit. So like, this is why I said earlier, I think because, and this gets to the verse where sin abounds, grace abounds much more, right? Because communication has so broken down and meaning has so broken down in the world around us today, people are actually just naturally forming these communities where they can sort this stuff out, right? And so it is happening around us, interestingly. Anyway, I just wanted to share those things.
So I don't know why we haven't had the Sherry and her neighbor collaborative conference up by you guys. I would imagine that.
I'm working on something. I mean, my health has just been so,
Yeah.
So, but now it's good, and yeah, something will happen, Paul.
All right. I already talked about that one. Andrew, what system do you run for D&D?
In this case, it was Shadow Dark because of the light rule set.
All right.
And my regular Sunday game is AD&D First Edition.
I haven't played D&D since the 1980s right when it came out. Me and my friend group started playing D&D. I haven't played since. It's just time. Anyway, so no more paintball for cheeses? Chad asks. Paintball, yes or no moving forward? Well, before we get to paintball, Rafe, I really enjoyed what Rafe brought to the conference. That was super helpful for me because I've always been a fidgeter. I can't sit still. I could never sit still. And so actually getting out to move my body was really helpful.
Rafe was my version of paintball for Jesus.
Last time I checked, Rick Walker said in a Hive Mind chat of Pastor Paul's live stream, he was going to take that over. So I'm stepping away. It's still a great idea. I'm still going to put it in the book, but no. Well, it needs to be a tournament. It was actually the topic in one of the Estuary groups because people wanted to know what it was about, and it was decided that the next move is to first do a tournament to promote the idea, or make people understand it's not just.
Well, we could have a tournament. We could have a tournament. We could start doing medieval armored combat.
Fine.
You'd love that.
So what did we learn from this conference that we want to now iterate on for next things?
Heart.
Meals at the gatherings just for the meals. Do it someplace beautiful. Still include a speaker so that you can tell the mysterious public that you're going to a conference because they know what that means. But if there's no speakers.
Right. So actually, Graham, it's interesting to say that there's someone that Sherry and I know who's talking about doing a conference in Appalachia in North Carolina. And he's talking about doing no speakers, and I'm like poking at him. It's like, no, you need to have. I mean, I understand not wanting to emphasize speakers, but have speakers. And like Jordan Hall is obvious because he's doing he wants to do the conference practically next door to where Jordan Hall lives. And I'm pretty sure Jordan Hall would say yes if asked. So
Sam wants to tweak this. One thing you would definitely recommend for future conferences, one thing you definitely wouldn't. Because of course, Chicago is in the throes of putting one whale of a conference together.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be extraordinary. I'm looking forward to it.
I think there's more opportunities for coordinated lodgings.
Yeah.
And I like if you can get B&Bs close to each other, that'd be helpful. Like so that the brunch we sprang on Sherry, like those could be more of a intentional.
So I wasn't able to make it work for timing, but it could be something I could do if my health permits and I'm able to do another one in the future. It's something I could do for a future conference. But state parks often have retreat centers that can be leased at surprisingly affordable rates, where you could host a conference and you could have literally everyone together for the entire conference housed at the retreat center.
Yeah.
So check with your state parks and see if they have retreat centers that are available to lease. But you need to plan ahead of time, because usually you can't lease them you can't be more than a year away, or it basically has to be exactly 1 year from the time you want it. I just did this for my daughter's wedding in May. And I wanted to do it for this conference originally, but the timing didn't work out. So I had to figure out a plan B, and Olympia CRC was my best plan B. I totally agree, Graham. If I could have had everyone together, like the whole conference, that would have been even better.
And there are a lot of church conference grounds that you can get. Vendonk had one for a while that we were looking at. I know there was one. We did monasteries for the conference that we did in DC, the Catholic conference. So yeah, I think the housing thing. So for like at my sister, there will be camping. There's a bunk room. There are nicer rooms, and there are other Airbnbs and hotels in the area. But with my sister's event that we did in 2018, all of us stayed, or most of us stayed right there the whole time. And that affords, so you have your session schedule, and then you have your meals. And my sister is going to have some really great meals for us. So part of the reason I do this at my sister's place is she's super hospitable, and it's this 18th century farmhouse, and she has a whole YouTube channel on decor. So she loves decorating, and it's going to be a really, really cush thing at my sister's place. There you go. I just keep advertising this thing, Grizz.
And if you want to send Grim Grizz there, you should donate at ko-fi.com/GrimGrizz now, because he's pricing that at least $3,000.
Boy, I'd better tell my sister to put an extra 0 on the website.
So Sam, he said you didn't answer the question. Lodging, what else? I think, I'm one of those. You want to have your cake and eat it too. It feels like more downtime would be good, but that's impractical for people traveling and stuff. It's just too much time. And more, because I would have loved, and that's probably why where you're having it is really key. I mean, Olympia was beautiful. But somebody said you should have it by an actual estuary. There are actual estuaries there, but you weren't able to.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to go see any because I was too busy talking to people the whole time.
Well, I would say, Sam, you should maybe keep in mind what Nate did with the speakers, the length of time the speakers spoke, and the number of estuary meetings that we had, because I think that was really, really key to building that depth of fellowship that we experienced there together. I was talking to my sister about it on the way home, and I said I was really glad that it wasn't speaker heavy, and it was really centered around being together, and so that would be my. But it depends on what you want to accomplish there, right? Like if you really want something to be shared, like if you want a speaker to really lay out his.
Also, Sam, I just want to hit me up anytime, and we can set up a time where we can meet and we can talk, because I am ELC's conference liaison. So if you want to meet and like brainstorm ideas for the conference, I'd be happy to help out. It's literally my job.
And it's, I mean, the size thing for venues, Mark Van Heidsma's church, the Olympia CRC, was the perfect size for this conference. Chino, which is definitely a decent sized campus, was a good size. Now Chino might build. John Van Donk has been trying to talk them into building sort of an estuary wing on their church, and so it could be that Chino gets to level up and have even a bigger group. But I know the church, another CRC church in Chicago, churches tend to have large, main stage places and not enough breakout spaces. And so it's really a tricky thing going up. When I do some Living Stones things, it's going to be small because I don't have a lot of main stage space, but actually we do have a fair amount of breakout space in this church, just the way this church was constructed. So I've still got to think about how to get Living Stones in the game here. But all right, first let me thank all of Sherry and Luke and Jess and Grizz and Nate for coming on today and sharing this. And I am going to drop the link, and each of you are released if you need to go or want to go. And if you want to stay and as a minor celebrity, as a micro celebrity, and talk to the various people who come into the stream, you're more than welcome to. So thank you.
I'm taking the
Thank
5.
you, Paul.
All right, there's the link.
All right, I'm going to go. I'm going to keep listening. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Nate, Luke, Sherry. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Bye.
Same. I will listen.
All right. Well, it's always funny the pause. Is anybody going to come in? Is anybody going to come in? We will see. We will see. But I do like, because I remember when I was flying home with Van Donk from our first Europe trip, he was like, okay, what's next? And I said, well, I think the different estuaries need to have their own conferences. And I don't think it needs to be centrally planned. I don't think it should be centrally planned. I'd like it to be more chaotic than that. And that way, what I loved about this conference, this was so Grail Country. It was so Grail Country. And I know some people are going to have problems with this and that. And I can't wait for some of the reactions to the videos to come out. That's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, Graham's talk came out on Grail Country about 3 hours ago. I'm sure. I haven't seen the comments yet, but it came out at 9 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm sure that'll be.
But a big part of this is the churches have been sort of fighting like battleships. They sort of stay and they lob shells at each other. And I much prefer C.S. Lewis's vision of how the Protestant Reformation should have been handled, where around warm fires and pipes and pints and good food with friends talking together about what in the church can be done better. And it's a messy situation, but this is maybe in the next Reformation that we were all in. People don't often remember, because when you hear Protestant Reformation, you think about Martin Luther and all of the political drama around him. But a big precursor to the Reformation were house churches and small groups that were, I remember I drove Michael Martin around a lot on this one. And so you're talking about the Roman Catholic thing. He's like, well, I've got a house church now. I said, wait a minute. Roman Catholic house church. How does that work? And, this is what we're sort of trying to process now, because the churches, the Protestant Reformation happens in the West, because of the particular development of the church in the West. It was different in the East, and the political alignment of churches in the West with the kings and with the military powers So now the church does not have, I was thinking about the Louise Perry, Ross Douthat conversation. The church does not have the same institutional power it had in the late Middle Ages. And nations have this extraordinary tyrannical power over us, and societies now, and technology has just increased that. So I think this next round is going to be, I think we are participating in this next round of the purification and the reformation of the church. So
yeah,
it appears nobody wants to talk to us. Nobody wants to jump in.
All right. Well, I did say Tayo said something about helping him to plan a micro conference. Yes, I would be willing to help you with that. Just reach out.
So Nate, in terms of what little estuary structure there is, Nate is the guy who's supposed to help estuary groups that are like, we'd like to do a conference. I'm still waiting for Minneapolis. Minneapolis has so many.
I think they all showed up at my church on Sunday too.
Minneapolis is just over pregnant for an event, so I don't know what's wrong with them.
Yeah, they got to do it.
They got to do it. They got to do it. That's right. Minneapolis needs one. Mandy is asking.
Graham is there too now. I mean, so we've got another.
I know.
Person. So
Paul Leitner, CW Weeks, Luke. It's like, Michael.
Hi. Hello. I have fear of missing out. I was glad to get the barbecue preview with Nate. That was wonderful. So but I just upped my membership level so that I'll get first crack, because that's my home turf. So I feel like I should make it happen. Yeah. So but please don't make it $3,000 unless if there's going to be unless if there's some sort of a ministerial discount or something, because
it is not $3,000.
Okay,
I know Grizz is going to look at the
even Pajot's VIP tickets were $750.
So yeah, Grizz is going to look at my thing and say, he's just going to shake his head and say, "Oh, you so left money on the table." Yeah. So, Chad the Alcoholic, what say you? He says nothing. Grizz is back. Pete, what say you?
No one is saying anything when you say, "What say you?" That's odd.
Pete?
Yo.
Pete?
Okay.
All right, Pete.
Is my air conditioner too loud?
No.
It's good. Good.
Perfect. Oh! I'm going to figure out myself here. Okay. Were you calling on me to talk? Sorry.
Well, Chad didn't say anything. He jumped
Chad
in.
Didn't say anything.
I'm
curious about this phase of the church that you're talking about. This, you had said the communion of the saints. Thank you. I was listening to Russell Brand talk to Tucker Carlson, and I thought about the awakening. I thought about sort of this next phase. And is it that a lot of people are going to resist Russell Brand because he's not going to talk like a Christian person, like you were saying that there was a season where or at least in the Protestant, it's emphasizing the preaching of the word and making sure we get it right, and so systematic theology comes in, and we want to be right. And it's like, Russell Brand's not going to be right. He's going to say a bunch of wrong things, maybe. But is it possible that he could be like kind of preaching to a group of people, sort of like Jordan Peterson, who find themselves dislocated and, I don't know, not really feeling like they can go into the church because they don't have the right theology. They don't have it figured out. And so this is not my people. This isn't my clan, because these people obviously have it all figured out and I can't be there because I don't have it figured out.
Well, given his Fabian Society connections, I would suggest that he himself is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and if he were legitimate in his conversion, he'd be confessing a lot about the backroom hootenanny he must certainly be aware of after being Megan Fox's handler. However, you are correct in that his target demographic is vulnerable enough to be targeted by one such as himself, and that we should extend our outreach to that vulnerable demographic in as many ways as we can.
I'm going to say something that people are probably going to dismiss as terribly. This is exactly what a minister would say. I've got a cautionary feeling about brand new Christians being platformed extraordinarily for their Christianity when they've had fairly little experience as a Christian. And I'm not saying that they have nothing to offer. I'm not saying they should be pushed to the back. I'm not saying any of that. But there's no grift like the religious grift. You can grift harder and more destructively with a religious grift than with anything else. And what you have to know about, one of the things I really appreciate about the slowness with which the TLC and Estuary have grown is that we've had a chance to get to know people and to get to know what they think, how they are. There are going to be bad actors and bad characters who do real damage in any kind of movement. And the faster the movement, the more it's at stake, the bigger the chance for someone to come in and really abuse. So, I celebrate the fact that high status, high profile people are embracing Christ, and they already have big platforms. So, but
okay,
and go ahead, Pete.
Okay, sorry. Well, okay, if it's communion of the saints, if that's the phase, then is there a oh gosh, it would be filtered, is there in a sense an immune response to what you're talking about? Because I would agree, like this sort of the quick rise and the religious grift, and there's risk there. And if we're in a phase like, and I think TLC is an example of this, where it's communion of the saints, then there is accountability, I guess would be a word, that would rein in some of that inherent problem that you're touching on.
Well, part of what we're dealing with now is, and this is where, some of the conversation on Jacob's channel after what happened a couple of days ago, we don't know rules. Online, offline stuff, there are no rules for a lot of this. StreamYard, you're not going to find anything mentioned about StreamYard in anybody's church order. We don't know. We just don't know. And the big thing about the internet is no gatekeepers. Churches have gatekeepers to become, and now Protestantism has pushed the envelope and suffered greatly for it. Catholicism had a ton of gatekeepers and shows that gatekeepers alone won't necessarily keep everything good and safe. So, but the internet is the Wild West.
Yeah.
So, celebrate that Russell Brand is a Christian. If Russell Brand came and visited Living Stones, would I ask him to preach? No.
Yeah. Sorry if I ruined the mood.
You did not. No.
Well, I mean, if you're Russell Brand, people are going to pay attention to what you're saying, regardless of what you're saying.
I just
so,
think.
it's like, it's not. Like, what are we going? I would rather have him talking about his conversion to Christianity than other things he could be talking about.
Right.
Because people are going to listen to what he says, period.
Yeah, to Grimm's point, right?
and back to my another theme of mine, he needs a pastor. Now, to be Russell Brand's pastor in an in real life church, oh my goodness, I don't really wish that on anybody but he needs a pastor. He needs to be discipled. And it seems to me, I don't watch Russell Brand hardly at all, but it seems to me like there is a real life pastor. But, does he need a skinny jeans pastor? This is maybe where some of the Orthodoxy and the Catholic have something going. Maybe he needs a pastor in a robe and with a big beard that'll dress weirder than Russell and say, sit down, Russell. You're new at this novelty thing. Okay.
Yeah. When you think of this phase and the communion of the saints idea, do you feel like the internet is facilitating that? Do you feel like this type of connection, like we can connect to each other in a way that we never have before? And we see the church in a different way than maybe we have if we were just going to one congregation and that congregation exclusively.
Right. I think just like the Protestant, the printing press fueled the Protestant Reformation in the better and the worse ways, the internet is doing the same thing right now with this current transformation in the church. It's the best and the worst. It'll be on the internet. And I want TLC and Estuary to be some of the best.
So someone brought up something in the comments that I noticed that is kind of caught my attention. Like, so we're scrutinizing Russell Brand. Why don't we bring that same level of scrutiny to Jordan Hall, who is also a new convert? Like, why do we have this scrutiny of what Russell Brand's doing and how he's talking about his new faith, but we don't seem to have any of that? I mean, Jordan Hall might be the single most talked to person within our space.
Yeah.
Like Jordan Hall is everywhere.
Yeah.
And no one has said, hey, maybe we should give him a minute to work this out instead of, just bringing him immediately into the conversation.
I
think I'm the only one who intentionally delayed talking to him, actually.
Yeah.
So
I have thought of this a lot, and I listened to him. In his case, now I don't know because I haven't called up his pastor. In his case, though, there's at least some circumstantial evidence that he is in a real life community talking to people who there's a degree of real accountability and community around him.
Right.
But you're right. Maybe before I would have him on the channel again, or probably before I would, let's say, invite him as a speaker to an event at Living Stones, I might do a bit of due diligence. But here again, it's a little weird because we don't do that to our other non-Christian speakers.
Right.
I think a lot would depend on I wouldn't have him come preach and sermon at Living Stones. That would be inappropriate. And so I still do use the line of church and not church. And so again, go ahead, Sherry.
Well, I'm just thinking about knowing someone by their fruits, right? And so, like we have a garden and we've got apple trees and raspberry bushes, and you don't know in the spring what the harvest in the fall is going to look like. You have to wait and see, right? And then you have to taste and see, right? So, and I just wanted to relate a story because that's how I relate things to things. When we were, the last day that we were in Olympia, we went to visit Nate, and we had a little bit of a kerfuffle with getting Graham and Joy to the airport. And when we got to Nate's, Corey was sitting there. The D&D game was over. Unfortunately, I missed you, Graham. But Corey was sitting there, and Nate said, "Have you got room at your Airbnb for Corey to spend the night because he doesn't have plans for tonight?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure." And then I'm like, "Are you going to the airport by any chance in the morning?" He's, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to the airport." What time? The same time that we needed him to go to the airport. Okay. And then he crowned the whole thing, or God did actually, by telling me that he deliberately didn't make plans because he wanted to see what God was going to do. You know? And so, like, I just know in my own life, the one lesson that I have learned, and I think it's easy to forget, especially in this world of every day there's a new headline, every day there's a new, tragedy or something to worry about. That we really need to be more patient and give people time and realize that they're gonna fail, they're gonna stumble, they're gonna, but if we pray for them, like Russell Brand or Jordan Greenhall, they have a better chance at actually making it.
Right.
Like, this is something I've been thinking about for a while because Ian McGilchrist wrote a book called Against Criticism, and it's not available. Like, it's no longer in print, and I am desperately looking for a copy. So if anybody ever finds me one, please let me know. Because that was what kind of led him into this, project of right and left hemispheres. Because we really want to criticize things, and it's really easy to criticize things. And those things become the headlines, and they become the shock value, and they become, and we lose sight, I think, of what God is actually doing, yeah. So that's all I want to say about it.
And let me say that some people aren't criticizing him, but other people are diagramming his sentences to determine the neuro-linguistic programming he employs in his matter of speech over on the Broken Clock Tower Discord.
We can all sleep better knowing that the Broken Clock Tower Discord is on the case. And they will warn us.
We sniff out the snakes. That's all. We're sniffing.
You really need you need a Sherlock Holmes hat and a pipe.
Well, and I wonder if we're listening to Jordan Hall, almost like, and maybe this is just me, but we're sort of listening to him like he's another voice in our small group. He's not like a pastor standing up, in the midst of a church saying, "Thus saith the Lord," or something like that. Like, does that make sense? Like, if it's communion of the saints time, maybe, we're not saying, okay, this person is a pastor shepherding the flock, preaching the word, but is a fellow traveler, let's say, a fellow seeker, and I listen to that voice like I would a friend, like I would somebody who's just in my small group. I'm not necessarily looking for some authoritative figure, if that's what a pastor maybe is. But I don't know, just a thought there, because I keep going back to this communion of the saints idea, and I kind of like it, and I'm still working it out.
Well, Sam's comment, I thought Sam's comment was important. I know if you wanted to come in to make this comment, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, we're asking whether or not we should have how much platforming to give Jordan Hall, but we're also talking about him quite a bit, so it's a little bit kind of a weird dynamic. But I mean, I respect what people are saying, and I agree, especially kind of more in like a Russell Brand sort of case of giving people some space. But it's also cathartic for a lot of people to hear conversion stories when they're fresh. And that's powerful too, like a baptism Sunday at a church, where you have the people get up and say, "Here I am, here's why I'm getting baptized, here's my story in a couple minutes, gadunk." And so, I don't know. I think that you can still talk to people when they're fresh, and that has a role, but just don't give them authority beyond their maturity, I think.
And we regularly platform skeptics and heretics and all kinds of bad characters. Well, we do that. I mean, that's part of the TLC.
Yeah.
And there are plenty
Well,
of
that's
comments.
the reason. I mean, I want to clarify the reason behind my question, Paul, was to call attention to the double standard. I don't really necessarily. I'm not a put the brakes on Russell Brand person. It's like I said, my point on Russell Brand is like Russell Brand is going to have an audience no matter what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And if he's choosing to talk about his conversion, that is better than a lot of other things he can be talking about, and I'm fine with it. So.
All right, Sam, I sort of front-ended what you wanted to say. I didn't know if you had something else you wanted to say before we hear what Chad has been trying to say.
Well, I mean, I'm excited for input and feedback about what future conferences could look like. I'm sure I'll talk with Nate and other people from Northwestuary offline as well. But if there's anything that people wanted to say about that publicly while the memory is still fresh, I'd appreciate that too.
Well, I think one thing I would think about, Sam, is I would think about the place that you're. So I would think first of all, I would think about the people. It's important to think about who's doing it and where they're doing it. And the design of how the conference is constructed, the space that you choose to have it in, should be reflections both of the place that you're having it and the people who are organizing it.
Yeah.
So you should be able to sense that, oh, this was put together by Sam. And it's taking place in Chicago. There should be a Samness and a Chicago-ness to whatever.
Well, I mean, I should also say Chad gets a lot of credit too.
Chad,
I mean, Chad got the ball rolling. You know,
he sure did. Yeah.
This isn't the Sam show. I'm trying to pick up a football that's handed to me and run with it responsibly. The church that will be the main host of the Chicago conference is a very suburban-y. Even it's like very close to one of the largest malls in suburban Chicago, and it's by some highways and some exit ramps and on ramps. So the texture of the place is interesting in that regard. It has an excellent parking lot and a good central auditorium, and it's only about a 15-minute drive from O'Hare. But the hotel nearby and stuff like that, like you'll have to cross under a large highway to like get from a hotel to the church and things like that.
It's Chicago.
I mean, it's Chicago-y, infrastructure-y, whatever you want to call it.
But that's appropriate though, because it is Chicago, Sam, right? I mean,
some parts of Chicago aren't quite like that, but this place happens to be like that. And so like I'm thinking about, you know, you guys were mentioning social events as a fun thing, and like maybe, you know, the conference ends at like 8 and then there's like some sort of hangout that is designated afterwards or something like that. It's like, well, what about this fancy bowling place that's like in the fancy shopping mall right near the church? You know, like these are the sorts of things that are on offer. So it'll feel, I think, kind of commercial, I would say, compared to eating barbecue in Nate's backyard. But that's what we have to work with.
Way different. It won't. It will not be like the Northwest Estuary at all. I don't foresee that happening. The nature of the Midwest Estuary event will be a completely different spirit for sure, and that's good. I think that's a really good thing.
I do too.
I don't think that this thing. That's what's so nice about these. It's just not McDonald's. You can't just go get a Estuary and go plant.
Although we'll be 5 minutes from McDonald's headquarters if we want to go to McDonald's headquarters. That's an option. So, you know, it's right nearby.
I'd just like to say that I was actually really fascinated with the fact that the leadership, the people who put it together, which was primarily Nate's family. Oh, look at that. That just trickles down, Sam. Like it's actually quite fascinating to see how that is. So whoever is involved in your organizational committee or whatever, they will trickle through, you know, into it. And it's just really, I mean, for me, the unseen world is like, I'm always trying to look at that, right? Like, what is that? How does that happen? But it happened.
I also want to suggest to you, use Jess if he's at all available.
Yeah.
Like, for real.
What are the best ways to use Jess?
Jess is an amazing
We've
skill
already
set.
started.
Yeah, he does graphic design, web design, video production. He designed our badges. He designed our website. He ran the sound and video recording for the conference. Like, his skill set is just so impressive.
Yeah. It was really
and
good.
you know, he was willing to do it all in exchange for, you know, free ticket and airfare to come out to the conference. And he did so much, and he was just so amazing. So if he's available,
he's in Kansas City, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, now they're all coming. Alan, of course, has been exposing the secrets of the TLC on YouTube. I didn't want anybody to know about my private jet.
I mean, Paul, all things hidden will be brought to the light. You should know that. What is done in the dark, my friend. What is done in the dark, you know?
What was so funny is that I posted it on Twitter, and people are like, well, if you didn't want people to know about these things, why did you post the video?
That is one of the funniest things about comedy, is just you realize how many people are just like, oh, well, of course. Oh, he told me that, you know, he had a private jet. Why would he, you know, I don't mean to poo-poo anybody, but there are 30% of people on this planet who have zero sense of humor. I'm sorry, but it's just true. So be very careful. But even that, as a comedian, is even funnier. Like, when I say something and people are like, "You were really rude to someone," I'm like, that's sad that you think I'm nasty and rude, but it's even funnier than it is sad that you think that was earnest. So it's the paradox of, I have to say these things because it's even funnier to watch someone take it seriously.
Alan, what did you want to say?
I just wanted to jump in because I saw all the cool people and I wanted to be a part of it. So,
all right,
yeah.
then I'll go to Joseph.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm just peeping in real quick just to get a quick question off. And as a lead on to that, I just gotta say, Nate, thank you for your beautiful opening speech there. Really loved it. Very touching. I really hope it leads Sam to accept Trinitarianism as the valid, you know, Christian expression of the Godhead, you know. Anyways, apart from all that, I just wanted to ask, how is this going to be? How do we envision this to be scalable to other parts of the country where there's, you know, younger people? You know, I'm thinking of myself, obviously, because I'm so narcissistic here, but like people with families, younger people. Is this like, how was this initiated? Was this just Nate saying, look, I'm just going to go Lone Ranger mode and start this up in, you know, the Northwest? I heard there was a lot of discussion about making Estuary more autonomous in various regions, but is this something that we, you know, are hoping that there's more of? Any thoughts about that?
I don't know how Estuary could get more autonomous.
Oh, right. Of course. No. But I just mean in terms of the event style.
Oh, so we've had Thunder Bay.
Yeah.
We've had Chino. We've had DC.
Yep.
We've had some in Europe. Living Stones, hopefully, will get in the game at some point. And so you know, Connecticut. So I'm hoping that just sort of a natural distribution, things will emerge, sort of a free market way, that Minneapolis has to happen.
Have Luke get on that.
So, there's no plan. There's no plan.
It just happens.
It just happens.
It's the beauty of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's, if it scales, it's by frequency. Right?
Yeah.
I don't think the conferences are going to get bigger and bigger, or they'll become something else.
So Matthew Butler asks, why should this be scalable? Perhaps
Yeah, because I'm selfish and it would be cool to go to something like this.
Joseph, where do you live?
I live in Minnesota, southern Minnesota. Yeah.
Okay, well, we need to
start
Minneapolis
twisting
has to-
Luke's arm and pulling.
Well, I'm like an hour from Luke. You know, I'm not a city slicker here who lives in the metro area. So
we have people who drive an hour for the Chicago meetup. We have some Wisconsinites who come to the cross state boundaries even to get to our meetup.
Well, Wisconsin, they're no good. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's a great project. Hats off to everybody who. Hats off to everyone involved. Really like what I've seen so far from the Northwestuary, and so keep up the good work. I'm surprised this stream's still going on. Paul's gonna lead another 24-hour stream.
Joseph, do you live in Bishop Barron's bishopric? That's the word.
No. I'm.
You got to be close if you're an hour south.
But here's the funny thing. Where I live, no. But my church, I'm Orthodox. My church is just down the street from where Bishop Barron's Cathedral is.
Well,
so he's been in my church.
You can't be Catholic for the sake of Bishop Barron. I mean, if Bishop Barron were my bishop, that would change my calculus on which church to go to.
Oh, you heard that here.
Wow.
You heard that here.
There you go. I'll tell him that.
Flip it.
Yeah. Well, my bishop's really close friends with him too. So
Bishop Barron, for the record, used to be a priest at a church 10 minutes from me. So.
Oh, well, there you go.
Back when I had no idea who he was, and I was probably a little kid, but it's true.
Yeah. Well, great. I'm just always looking out for the rural folks, who don't live in these metro areas where, all the.
It's hard to be more rural.
Missouri.
Yeah.
No, it's hard to beat Sherry in terms of remote.
Oh, Sherry. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Sherry's a rock star. What can you say? She's the mom of the corner. So
I don't know about rock star, but I mean, I am thinking about doing something. I've talked to my husband for like 5 years. He's like, "Are you ever going to do that thing you want to do?" And I'm like, but I want to do like a wild twin thing here, a wild twin estuary, where people just get their pup tents and put up with the mosquitoes.
Oh,
and
yeah. Woodstock style.
Hang out in the woods and,
The survival estuary, almost as great as the barn raising estuary.
One of
All
these
right,
days.
well, I got to get going. It's actually the Dozinki Harvest Festival tonight in New Prague, Minnesota. New Prague for the people that are not from around these parts. But
I love how the Midwest just steals from Europe and then butchers their names.
So I gotta get going, but just appreciate all you guys are doing. And anyways, we'll look forward to Sherry's Naked and Afraid estuary. All right, thanks all.
He is risen. He is risen indeed. Risen. Never seen your face on here. Welcome. Oh, you're I can't hear any sound. Uh-oh.
There we go.
Yep, now we hear you.
That's okay. I was hoping to catch Jacob's question because I've been thinking about that a lot about that too. I dropped the question about estuary adjacent groups because there are several thought leaders and their efforts across sort of the evangelical North American world who are putting time into running intentional conversation groups or setting up a protocol. And I don't think any of them, my church just started one. Right now it's for men only because it comes out of a men's ministry, but I can't imagine anything is scalable in the vertical or multiplicative sense. And my church has a lot of young families, like robust men's and women's communities, friendships across generations. So I'm like, and I'm an hour and a half from the nearest estuary, and I haven't gone yet. So it's like, oh, an intentional community, got to start somewhere. But as far as scaling, it starts with effort, starting the conversation even after church service. My 2 cents on that question.
Well, ElseNet, just estuaryhub.com, sign up for ElseNet, get into Vendonk's training group. I mean, it's not a hard thing to learn. Now, obviously, to learn some small group stuff, but the church thing has been interesting in that I'd love to say I was surprised at how much resistance I get from pastors. It's also the case that if the pastor isn't committed enough to Estuary to actually go or lead, it's got a much tougher path in the church. If the pastor says, this is important enough that I am going to devote time to it. And in my case, time Sunday morning, and to do it every week. Now that I've been doing it every week for 9 months, I'm really big on every week, because I've done it once a month. I've done it twice a month. And now we're doing it every week. And it's like the night and day difference between twice a month and every week. And it's all the dynamics that we saw at the Northwestuary conference. The more repetition, the more cycles, people get to know each other. People get to trust each other. It just becomes that much more powerful. Mm-hmm. And then the healing can take place. The people of our local 9 a.m. estuary, like half of the people don't come to Living Stones, but they are there. Okay. They're there at 9:15, but that's Sacramento.
Hey, Paul, I have a question. What do you think? What do you think is the difference between pastors, or in the case of my church, the rector of my church, that seemed to just get it and engage in it? Like, I mean, a lot of people there got to meet my rector. Was actively involved in the conference. A lot of people got to meet him. So what do you think the difference is? Like, what's it? What Father Joe and you, like, what's different about you compared to the people that you run into that are resistant to it?
Well, I think a lot of ministers are formed by their traditions. And so, I mean, what we did, part of the reason we're doing this in Christian Reformed churches is because we really couldn't do this in Catholic or Orthodox churches, unless they have a big social hall, because this couldn't be in the holy place in those churches. We can do them in Christian Reformed churches because they're Protestants. But so I would say Orthodox would be like, there's no liturgy here. The Catholics would be like, there's no sacrament here. Michael Martin does Roman Catholic House Church. It's like, I talked to it, it's hilarious. Protestants, the usual objection among Protestants is there a clear articulation of, and then depending on their tradition, the gospel or the word, or is there preaching of the word? And I keep saying, do you hold AA? Do you have a food bank? If you do these things, you can do this thing. But because it's word centric for Protestants, that's where the trip up comes. And then they're worried about, well, what if someone says heresy in the group? Or what if someone who has influence comes in and suddenly whole groups of people are now worshiping at the Orthodox Church, or, going over to the Sikh temple? There's anxiety around these issues in Protestant churches.
Well, what's the advantage of being attached to a church? I feel like there are some advantages of estuary groups that are just have no connection to a church, and that erases any sense of secret agenda or something like that, secret churchy stuff like Sherry was talking about, and just keeping it separate from any denomination and using like a public library or some other sort of space.
There are some groups that do that, and using public libraries and such. I think part of how Estuary benefits from being church adjacent and have a church sort of hosting and sponsoring are a few things. Number one, churches have, generally speaking, a lot of experience with small group dynamics. And having experience with small group dynamics helps facilitate an estuary group. You're just sensitive to how can I sort of tone this person down a little bit, and all of those small groups dynamic. Number two, churches often have available facilities that work really well for this. Tables and chairs in little rooms that are separated by sound. They have classrooms that are available. Number three, and this is something that we almost never talk about, churches have a sensibility about sexual ethics. And, it comes up fairly often that is TLC, and is this like a cult that's going on? Well, first there's the cult, and cults are always fall prey to money, sex, and power. And being adjacent to a church. So when, for example, in one estuary, someone starts selling psychedelic drugs, the estuary leader takes them outside and says, no, we're not doing this here. And if we were to have an estuary group where someone is, say, using the group to sleep with a bunch of women in the group, probably in a church adjacent group, someone would step in and say, we don't really have rules about sex in estuary.
Just personal advice. It's a poor strategy. We got at least 10-to-1 male to female ratio. I would recommend for the sexual predators out there, look somewhere else. You'll find it.
That's right. Not a contact, not a target-rich environment. Yeah. So I think I'm not going to say that there shouldn't be estuaries in other places, because there have been right from the start, there have been, but I think there's a reason why churches tend to be good with it. I don't know, Nate or anybody else wants to say something about that?
No, I think you spoke well to it.
Well, Nate and Sam kind of stole my question, so I don't even know why I came on now. But it's along those lines about how closely estuary needs to be tied to church, and also going off Reason's question about growth/scale. There's without saying it, there's an opportunity where I could sort of present estuary as to a church that's looking for ways in which to be more active in the community, put it that way. And I'm sort of hesitant. I'm hesitating doing that, partly because there's a sense in which it's just, I feel it's going to be get turned into alpha, which it isn't. But also hesitant about how quickly the churches love to grow things and how much they're gonna want to start growing estuaries everywhere, and maybe I don't know if I'm just being too protective of it, or I'm being cautious and wise.
Let me say this clearly. Estuary does not need to be tied to a church.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to go now, but I wanted to just kind of share my thoughts on, I remember when this online space started to grow, and the Discord server came about, and it was all very organic. And I think I joined the Discord like the day you announced it, Paul. I remember jumping in and Jeff P saying, Sherry, because we were just talking in the YouTube comments, before that. And the first thing that came up was rules. Now, I am not a social media person. I don't have a phone, so for me, getting on the Discord was, it was my first time experience on any kind of like social media. And I didn't know that people were familiar with Discord and that Discord servers had rules, right? And so my gut response to all that was, no, don't do that, right? And there was a little back and forth, and then finally there was an agreement that there were not going to be any rules, and Joey was basically just a tyrant. He was like the king, right? Which was great. And the thing just it just bubbled up from this, and David put a thing in here, a comment in here, grow, not scale. And as a farmer, that's how I feel. about any of these movements, that they should be organically growing up out of and springing up out of what's already, like the fertile ground, basically, that's already there, right? And that's how it feels to me. That's how it feels. It feels like that's how this community actually came about. So I just wanted to close out with those thoughts. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank
Bye.
you, Sherry.
Great to
Bye,
see you.
Nate. Bye, everybody.
All right, I want to close this live stream soon, because I want to go out to lunch with Grim Grizz. I know FOMO means fear of missing out. So I know y'all are jelly that I get to have lunch with Grim Grizz. So, any last words before I play a little branding?
Wait, Nate, before we go, when you said every good thing will be remembered in the mind of God forever, was that from something?
It was sort of it was kind of a takeaway from a conversation that I had with Jordan Daniel Wood. That sort of flows out of that, but it wasn't a quote.
Okay, I was just thinking about it this week, so
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, Jordan went a little further in that conversation and said that that all possible goods will be actualized.
All right. I just want to say biggest. So when you get the shock of meeting someone in person that you didn't expect, Matthew Parlato. Wow, what a bundle of energy that dude is. He is just off the chart. So much fun to meet him. Risen, thank you so much for coming on the stream. First time.
Thank you. So many things revolve around the difference between being programmatic and procedural. And in the way my mind and my heart work, I'm a very programmatic person, but thinking about like which pastors would invest in an estuary. I think that's one of the lines of demarcation. And I think in most cases, if you ask most Christians throughout history about how growing closer to God actually works, it's usually a procedural answer.
Yeah. True.
But yes, thank you. Thanks for listening to my thoughts.
All right. Thank you, Risen. All right. I am going to play some branding, and thank you all for your participation. Let's see, what branding should I play?
Dog bark.
Let's play some dog bark. Play some more dog bark. I played that dog bark. All right, I'm going to play this dog bark. Thank you all.
day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Everything he does prospers, not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sits in the seat of mockers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Everything he does prospers, not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish.